Hello, everybody. Choosing a topic for research and translation. This is the title of this video. I received several questions. Multiple times I received this question, how to choose a topic for translation research. And many students at the master's and PhD degree often ask me what topic you recommend for us to research. So I thought it would be useful to just do in this broadcast this video in order to explain this to all of you. Probably it's going to be helpful also for those people who study social sciences as well. And I'm speaking now in English so that the reach is going to be better and broader. Now, the answer to your question is, what topic do you recommend me to take for my thesis? This is your question. And the answer is simply, I cannot do that. Nobody, absolutely nobody, can help you in finding a topic for research. The reason is that a topic just doesn't come up just because somebody suggests something to you. A topic comes after you study certain things, after you read certain research and papers, after you try to investigate certain phenomena. For that reason, it is you who decide what topic of interest you find suitable for you to research. This being said, we would like to discuss with you now the process of choosing your topic and how you try to find yourself in a situation where you can choose something suitable and doable at the same time. So it's not a matter of something that you like to do, but something that can be done. Let's go to the steps. In translation studies, in order for you to start writing a thesis on translation, you have prerequisites. Prerequisites mean that you already have some kind of knowledge of the theory of translation. Because when you start writing about research and translation, you're already assuming the position of a scholar. And a scholar cannot start from scratch, from nothing. This is the first important thing that you have to do. Without it, it's almost futile to try to find even one topic for your research. So you have to study translation, in other words. And I assume that when you reached the thesis stage, you already studied all of these things, the theories of translation. Let's assume, however, that you haven't studied them, or maybe you studied them but still feel that you do not really know what kind of things are useful for you to choose a topic. So, in translation study, what you have to understand is the following. Translation is related to meaning. In the early beginnings of linguistics, meaning was not a part of linguistic inquiry. Linguistics was at that time, especially in the beginning of the 20th century, heavily influenced by structuralism. And structuralism has nothing to do except with the paradigmatic and syntagmatic and other issues, phonetics, morphology, phonology, and all of these phenomena of language. They did not talk about meaning. What that means is that when translators wanted to have a field of study of their own, they did not find lots of benefit in linguistics as such. Of course, there are some researchers who talked about grammatical equivalence and problems in contrastive linguistics. I understand this. But talking about the depth of meaning, was outside the scope of linguistic studies. For that reason, translators and theorists of translation wanted to find any other field that would help them understand translation and try to find a theory for translation. So what they did was to go to other sciences, to other disciplines, in other words. And here it is your beginning. You need to see what kinds of those areas that have influenced translation studies. I will cite some examples, and this is not limited to them. Pragmatics was one of those fields. Semiotics was one of those fields. Semantics, and there is also ethnolinguistics, or you can say it is anthropological linguistics. This is about culture. So, your first thing to do is to ask yourself, do you know the contribution of pragmatics to translation theory? And the same thing with semantics, the same thing with anthropological linguistics, the same thing also with semiotics. Your beginning should be to read introductory texts about each of those fields that I have mentioned, just introductory. When you read those introductory components or passages or research, you start to develop some kind of thought about what you're reading. And this raises some kind of interest in you. Depending on your personality, you might be more interested in culture because you believe in humanity and you believe in interpersonal relations and others. And you find yourself suddenly more interested in culture than in anything else. You might be interested in certain words, synonyms, and antonyms, and you might find yourself in semantics closer than to any other field. Probably you find yourself more interested in pragmatics, or maybe in even neurolinguistics or psycholinguistics. So this is the very important beginning, is to start reading in those fields. The same thing applies to any other field in social sciences. Whenever you want to do your research on something, you have to start seeing the disciplines that have influenced that field, and you try to find yourself, where do I exist in those fields? Do I have interest in any of them? This is the question. What happens here is the following. Now, first you read, second you understand, and three you reflect. You reflect on your daily life, you reflect on your studies, you reflect on the linguistic phenomenon, and then you find some kind of interesting issues. Those interesting issues will need ages, of course, to be investigated. In other words, they will be the precursors of lots of topics in your mind. You will have lots of topics now in your mind, and you do not know which one to do, which one to take. It is still early. After those steps, it's still early for you to choose a topic. After you had some idea about those fields, if you find interest in any of them and you want really to study more about it, you just read more and try to find the journals and papers about this topic and see what they are talking about. This reading should be both intensive and extensive. What do we mean by that? Extensive means that you read about different disciplines, but to a shallow level. You do not read too much, just to get some taste out of what's happening. Intensive reading is when you feel that you are interested in a specific phenomenon or something and you want to understand more about it. So this is called intensive. And you start reading. It's very likely that sometimes you are shocked, surprised, and you are frightened when reading about papers and you feel that they are writing about great things. And it's very common among researchers to have the feeling that all of those people are doing something that I cannot do. I cannot do even 1% of what they do. Forget about that and don't let the fear capture you. Never. Just proceed forward and try to read. So, this is the issue that you have to think about. Contemplate and think and try to reflect what you read on the linguistic phenomenon. To give you an example, the first time I read about pragmatics and semiotics as well, but pragmatics in particular, I started thinking about the Holy Quran. So, pragmatics, in one way or another, is about the linguistic phenomenon that is carried by anything starting with he said, she said, he threatened, she promised, etc. And I started thinking about that in the Holy Quran. And I got some kind of topic or the beginning of a topic, which is what? Which is what are the issues in translating those verses in the Quran that start with قال, يقول, he said, he's saying, etc. At this moment, I just think. I don't do anything because I still have to inquire about other topics in my investigation. Now, you read about those disciplines, as I said. This is step number 1. What is step number 2? We're still talking now about the theory of translation. So, step number 2 is to follow a chronological, historical development of the theory of translation. It is very important in your research when you cite literature to do it chronologically so that an idea or a concept, a reader can see how it evolves over time. You see the point? So you have to read about the history of the theory of translation. Read books that talk about the history. There are many introductory books. Monday has a book about it, and others, maybe Basil Hatim and other people, they talk about some historical aspects of translation. It's very important and it will guide you towards your research in a better way. So when you read about the development, you have some kind of understanding why the theory of uh, equivalence, for example, developed. What are the problems with the theory of equivalence? You start asking yourself what happens at the moment with the theory of equivalence in translation. The same thing applies to social sciences, where you try to see the theories about specific phenomena in your field, regardless of whether it is in development or humanitarian assistance or whatsoever. So you read about the theory of translation, and I'm giving you a tip. Just focus on the equivalence theory and focus on the contemporary thought and schools of translation at the moment. There is the Scopus theory, for example. This is contemporary, and it is really gaining momentum, it seems to be. There are other theories, of course, for translation. Try to see how it developed from word to word translation until this moment. There are certain people who contributed to the theory of translation, and it is very important to read about them. Now, the question is, where do I find this information about the theory of equivalence? The answer is very simple. In this stage, if you want to read about the theory of equivalence, which is very important for translation theory, I suggest to you to read as many theses as possible in translation, because many of them talk about the theory of equivalence and tell the differences between them and how they evolve over time. And they are going to give you a very good summary. So you have to read about the theory of equivalence in particular. Don't forget that you have already read about the other disciplines, semiotics, pragmatics, semantics, and other things. As you read, there is something that you have to do. And this process takes lots of time. You have to dedicate lots of time in reading, but also in writing. You must have on your computer system certain programs any program whatsoever. And whenever you read something and you find it very interesting for you, very interesting, you have to quote it to get a quotation of what is said and to put it on your Word document, for example, or Notepad, indicate the name of the author, the title of the research or the book, and the page number. It's very important to state the page number. And just put it there and save it. This is very important because later on, what will happen often with research is that they say, I read something which is very relevant to my research, but I don't find it anymore. In order to overcome this problem, you have to do it in this way. This is what I suggest to you from my experience. Now, still, at the moment, you're reading a lot, and you have to read a lot, and it will take time. During the process of reading, you will have certain questions. What is the problem of translating jokes from English into Arabic? And you feel that there are interesting things about it. And remember, you read about the fields that I mentioned, and you read about the theory of equivalence, and you start thinking about it. So, once you have this thought about a specific issue or a question or problem in translation, search for it and try to see in intensive reading where it goes and what kind of thought that generates out of this reading. Now, here at this stage, you may reach a result, which is that the following: that this research is very interesting and nobody talks about it in the way that you talk about, or the way you feel, or probably somebody talked about it adequately, or maybe it is not doable. In other words, you don't have much information to support your hypothesis. What happens here is that you eliminate this topic. You continue reading, you stop the intensive reading and go back to the extensive reading. Try to read more. Another topic, another issue, another question jumps into your mind. Try to investigate it by intensive reading and try to see where you go. If you feel that you are at a dead end, you eliminate this topic and move to another one. From my experience, what happens is that apparently you will be facing lots of topics that are not doable, or maybe topics that have already been researched, and you cannot contribute anything to them. For that reason, the topic procedure, the topic selection procedure takes time. It takes time, and usually within this time, you are developing your own knowledge and your own deductions and mentality, and you are trying to see how to approach a topic in a specific way. However, there is just this question. If you keep finding research that talks about the topics that you are interested in, so you feel frustrated and you feel that, well, everybody talks about it. What should I do? No. Whenever you find somebody talking about a topic of interest to you, go to the limitations and see what are the limitations of this study and try to offer something that can bridge the gap, that can contribute to this topic in a different perspective. So maybe somebody talks about translatability of jokes from Arabic into English or from English into Arabic in the context of my country, Jordan. Well, that doesn't mean that you cannot talk about jokes in the context of other countries. Maybe that researcher talked about jokes between American English and Jordanian Arabic. Why don't you have to talk about the jokes, but with different languages? Maybe different dialects, maybe English in Britain or Australia or whatsoever. So don't feel frustrated from the very beginning. There is something very important to tell you, that sometimes you can proceed with the topic to a stage, to a developed stage, and suddenly find yourself at a dead end. And you find yourself you have to go back and choose another topic. If this happens, there could be several reasons. The most important one, which I believe, this is to the best of my knowledge, is that you haven't read enough. Because my hypothesis, this is my hypothesis and this is what I think. My hypothesis is that any topic can be researched if you have the knowledge. And even if there is a topic which is very simple, you try to investigate it and it is not adequately investigated anywhere. What happens maybe is that you feel that you are at a dead end and you don't know how to proceed. So I really feel that you're lacking the knowledge necessary to deal with this situation. It is a mistake, I believe, for researchers to start with a topic and then at a certain point after developing the premises of this topic to say, well, I am unable to do anything with it, I will change it. Before you change the topic, make sure that you really understand, that you have done your best to understand the topic and that your knowledge is enough to deal with this topic. So this is in general how to choose your topic out of the question of research that you are having, out of the curiosity that you're having, also the attention and the interest that you have. Now, what happens afterwards is that you have a topic, and this topic usually is very general. Usually, when somebody tries to make a topic, usually it becomes very general. When you have a general topic, you have a problem because it needs a lot of time for you to investigate it. For that reason, scientific research prefers good results out of specific topics rather than broad topics. Let's say, for example, the problems of translating the Holy Quran. Well, there could be thousands or millions of problems there. So, this is a broad topic. Instead of having it in this way, what you do is try to investigate the areas of problems. Remember also the areas that I mentioned to you, the discipline pragmatics, semantics, semiotics, etc., and the theory of equivalence, of course. And then try to see which one you can just simply investigate. Try to find something very simple. So you say the problems of translating verbs in the Holy Quran. This is more specific, you see. So you make intensive reading about translatability of verbs in the Holy Quran, and you find lots of researchers talking about it. But you feel that they are talking about different issues, although they are talking about verbs, different categories. So you say, I just noticed some kind of problems in translating the past tense. So you say problems in translating the past tense in the Holy Quran. But the Holy Quran is very big. So what kind of past tense are you going to do? So you say, well, I will choose a surah and try to see the problems of translating this past tense. So you say, problems of translating the past tense in Surat al-Baqarah. In Surat al-Baqarah. This is for example. And then you try to see more research about it and try to see intensively, to do intensive reading to find what did the researchers say about the past tense in Surat al-Baqarah in particular, or in any other surah. Then you find it still broad. So you see the translation of the past tense of a specific verb. You choose a specific verb. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, in this way, you are making your research not only narrowed down, not only simple, but also doable, something that you can do and investigate, something that you can work upon. So the question is now, how do I make sure that my topic statement is not broad, that it is specific, and it's not too specific, it's not too shallow? I suggest to you to meet with another person and make him challenge you with the questions. Devise your topic, following the steps that I told you about, and say, this is my topic. And let another person challenge you and say to you to ask you questions about it so that you can have this kind of discussion between you and him, and he will be or she will be the arbiter, the one who is attacking you, telling you that this topic is not correct, and trying to find some kind of compromise so that you can refine it better. This brings me now to another way of deciding on a topic. Now, you remember I talked about the whole procedure. Now, let's talk about it from the very beginning in a different way. Now, you can decide on any topic just that occurs into your mind now without reading anything. Without reading anything. You try to see anything that you are interested in. You certainly are interested because you are a researcher and you are interested in something. Otherwise, you will not be a researcher. So you say that we have a problem in translating, for example, medical terms. Okay. Say the translation of problems of translating medical terms between English and Arabic, and give it to a person who can challenge you. So that person is going to challenge you. If you give it to me, for example, I will ask you, I will tell you the following. I tell you the following: I am totally illiterate and don't understand anything in the world. But philosophically speaking, when you present to me your thesis, you have to present me something that when I read, I get the same understanding that you have. So I will tell you, you're talking about medical terms and their problems in translation. I say to you, I don't understand anything. Explain to me, what do you mean by medical terms? You say, well, I mean medical terms related to for example, to prescriptions. I say, okay, this is better. So you mean that translation, problems of translating medical terms in prescriptions. And again, I say to you, I don't understand. Are you talking about lexical issues or syntactic issues, semantic issues? I'm illiterate. And you would say, no, I'm talking about semantic issues. So he's talking about semantic issues in translating medical terms mentioned in prescriptions. So you see, this is how things work when you have somebody who can counter you with your thought and who can attack you. In this way, it's going to be narrowed down. And at the same time, I'm going, as a researcher, as a peer researcher, I'm going to tell you what to do. If you say, for example, that you want to discuss the issue of translation of the simple past of a specific verb in Surah Al-Baqarah, I would ask you the following question. I would ask you, on what basis? What is your perspective? What is your eyes? Are you going to talk about the pragmatic side of the language here, or the semantic words, or the talking about the culture? What are you going to talk about? So I'm going to frame you under a specific area. In other words, peer review is very important, and it has really proven to be very effective when you show it to another researcher and try to see what their thought is. Remember also, another researcher has already been developing his own work on research. For that reason, he would be able to see whether this is a topic that can be doable or not. Because I will ask you the following. You say to me that your research is going to be about problems in translating the verb so and so in the past tense in Surah Al-Baqarah. I'll ask you the following. What is the way that you think you are going to use in order to get these verbs? You say, I don't know. And I tell you, as a researcher, go to this book, blah, 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 and this is about content analysis, and this is how you try to find the words, for example, and how to try to code them, to categorize them. I ask you, are you going to use the qualitative or quantitative? You say, I don't know. And I tell you, go to the book so and read about the qualitative and the quantitative. Are you going to make interviews with people? Are you going to make contrastive analysis to see how translations have been done about this or not? These are the questions that I'm going to ask you, and each question is going to direct you into a specific way of thought that you have to do and work upon in order to develop your topic and refine it better and better. So this is, in a nutshell, this is the way that I think a topic should be chosen. It is a problem, yes, that has to be addressed, but has to be very specific. In order to be very specific, first of all, you have to read about the knowledge, the disciplines that are related to translation in our case. In social sciences, of course, in your own field, it has to be related there. And second, you have to see what kind of interest you have in those fields. And third, you have to narrow down the topic into a problem that can be solved through several means or several methodologies. This is through the peer review. Probably it's going to help you in that. And remember, you will need both intensive reading and extensive reading. I think that I have explained them to you. Now, I hope that this introduction to topic writing or to topic selection is going to be useful for those who would like to write the research. If you have any question, put it in the comment. Hopefully, I will be able to answer your questions about topic selection. This video, if you put any comment, please, it's just for topic selection. Other things, we can discuss them later on. So that's all for today, and I am reading something from the chat at the moment. Apparently, there are some questions in Arabic. Muhammad Abu Iriban. Muhammad, what you're talking about is not related to topic selection, so let's stick only to the topic. I really don't understand. your question. If you have a topic, you just frame it or give it a title, and we can discuss it and see where to go and how to do it. However, you're talking, I think, about poetic translation. This is not my field, and I will not be able to help you a lot in this, other than the the information that I have just provided for the selection of the topic at the moment. Anyway, please, Mohammed, follow up with the next videos that I'm going to broadcast on the process of writing research. Probably you'll find some answers to your question. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. And don't forget to follow up with the next videos if you are interested in research writing. And please share this video if you think that other people are interested in it. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye bye.